Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew. I'm going to be going through kind of what's new, mostly with GP. I decided on this, there's such a long list of new features and things they've added to the product over the past few versions. So today I'm going to focus on version 2016 and 2018, which I think covers probably most of you for either what you're on or what you plan to move to. So I picked from the list kind of those features I think probably appeals to a wider audience, things you're more likely to be interested in or use, and we'll go through those. I'm going to talk through the items first, and then I'll switch over to demonstrate some of those, just to make it flow a little bit better, maybe save some time. Now, on the screen, I know at the back it's a little difficult to see some of the detail, it's a little washed out maybe. So I'm going to try to slow down when I'm going into some windows in GP, but if you're not sure what I clicked on or where I am or what have you, just stop me and just say, where are you, how did you get there, what have you. I want to make sure that you can leave with some good information if there's a piece of this that you're interested in, so you can take it back to the office and take a look at it yourself. So I'll be going through the 2016 and 2018 new features. I'm going to talk a little bit about the GP support lifecycle because it's a question that comes up once in a while. A little bit about the GP roadmap, and then Rick will be coming out to talk about some of what's new with the actually the cloud applications and offerings from Microsoft, and also what's happening with the Joesoftware products. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, right on. My voice was a little scratchy this morning. Yesterday, as a group at Joesoftware, we went out to do, a bit of a team building thing out in the great outdoors. And I think what happened was, you take a technology consultant out of his dark room for a little while and throw him out into nature, and an allergic reaction results. So hopefully my voice will hold up. So let's get into it. So 2016 new features. So one of the things around document scanning, and I might talk or show a little bit more than just the whole scanning thing, but scanning came out a couple versions ago. It was limited in some ways. You could only scan in one kind of page per document per se. Now you can scan multiple pages in. It'll become one document as one attachment within GP. And you can now show you can scan directly from the document attachment window. Actually, on that, who's using document attachments today in GP? Anybody? Brad? Anybody not but would like to? Over there? I know some organizations already have, document management system outside of GP, and maybe they won't use the GP one, but we'll just look at a couple items there. Workflow. We have a workflow session this afternoon, so I'm not going to go too deep into this. But on the workflow with 2016, they did add Word templates for batch approvals. So if using the email approving process, you do get an attachment that's in the form of Word template attached to the email, so the approver can look at the details right within the email without going into GP. And they've also added condition management and reassignment notifications. So condition management, so when you get into a multi-step kind of workflow, what do you really want to happen when this passes or fails or what have you. Reassignment notifications, just what it says. So if you do reassign a step to somebody, an email notification can be configured to go out to that person. Smart List. They've added a few things. If using the Smart List tool within GP and not the third-party product called Smart List Builder, GP has the Smart List Designer. You can now import and export Smart Lists. So you can share them between systems. Handy if we're building a smart list for you maybe and want to take it from our system onto your system, that sort of thing. Also, instead of having to be limited to the out-of-the-box ones and modify that with all the columns that are created and everything else and remove all those columns every time, create one and want to use it as a template for other ones, it's a lot easier to import or export than import that into a new smart list, and there's less work involved. Also, big beef by many users. When you hit that Excel button in Smart List, it would export it, but the numbers would come through as general. Now they're actually formatted as numbers in Excel, so you don't have to go back and reformat columns. And another neat feature, password protecting. So if you're creating a favorite, you can password protect that favorite. So nobody can delete or modify that favorite on you unless they know that password. So that's kind of a neat thing. In the finance area, budget import exception report. In the past, if you had some issues on importing your budgets from an Excel spreadsheet, it may be cumbersome to figure out why it's not doing certain things. Now they'll tell you if you got duplicate accounts, for instance, that sort of thing. So a report actually comes up once the import is finished. And they've added the Scotiabank EFT format. Next in purchasing, batch credit card option. So when you're doing a payables payment batch, you can now pick credit card. Up till now, up till 2016, you could pick checks or EFTs if you have your system configured for the EFTs. Now you can have a credit card to be used on the payment batch. We'll take a look at that. And for those of you using project accounting and or requisitions in purchasing, you can now pick your project and cost codes within the requisition. Sales, new feature is instead of using the multi-step process to enter a cash receipt and then go into the deposit window to deposit the receipt, you can turn on deposit cash receipts automatically, which allows you then, when you post cash receipt, it becomes a deposit. Probably most useful if using batch level processing and you're creating a batch of receipts that gives you the deposit entry that you want that shows up in your bank reconciliation. And also the all-in-one view, which was in purchasing, has now been added for sales and inventory. We'll take a look at that. In 2018, with workflows, reminder emails. So you can have expiry times, and a reminder email can go out to, say, the approver to say, hey, there's still this one transaction out here, or whatever the workflow is for, you need to go and approve this. I also added the GL account workflow, so you can have approvals on setting up new GL accounts, have an approval process for that, and also for purchase invoices. In the system area, web client now has the autocomplete function, that list in the GP desktop application that's now in the web client. More sort options on many windows. We'll take a look at that and what that means. View and modify attachments in inquiries. The document attachments were not necessarily available in all the inquiry windows. You can view them now, and you can also edit. One prompt for system password. Who uses some of the admin functions where GP asks for the system password? Anybody here? Probably those of you maybe managing the security settings, all that. If you go into roles, you have to enter the system password. If you go into tasks, you have to. Now, only once per GP session, you'll be prompted for that password. And another thing for those using analytical accounting, you can now copy the settings by user from one user to another to say for these dimensions and so on. You can copy settings from one user to another, which makes it a lot faster in many cases. In the sales area, printing statements. Now, instead of going the statements function where you kind of like batch processing statements or picking a particular customer in there, you can just go to the customer window and print your statement for that customer. And any statements you have set up are available in the drop-down. Under the purchasing, save payment settings. When you're doing a payment batch, a check run or EFT, now, some of the selections you do might be selecting often a certain class of vendors to pay or something like that. Now you can save those settings and have multiple ones saved. So when you go to process next month, let's say, you can just pick which settings you want and it'll populate the window for you. So it makes that a lot faster. And also under purchase requisitions, you now have a print, an actual document you can print. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these. All right. And there goes my name. I'm going to start with the scanning here and the document attachments. Under the admin settings, there's this document attachment setup, and this is the only requirement to be able to use document attachments. And there's a number of settings in here. The ones that are probably, I think, are really neat features is that you can have attribute defaults here. So you can actually have names of attributes, and then you can put in a description on each for a given attachment. In my case, I just called one contract, another one called document, another one called image, and we'll see what that looks like. Also in the bottom here, you can turn on the ability to flow document attachments from a master record to a transaction. I'll show an example on that where we have a contract on a customer if we want it to flow down to every invoice or quote or something that we do. All right. And also at the bottom, I turned on send attachments and emails. But we'll have a quick look at what that actually means and where the scanning comes into play. I'm on a customer record right now. Does everybody see that somewhat okay? Now, with the document attachments, there is an attach button at the top, okay? With no attachments, I believe it's just, you just see the paperclip, but I already have attachments on there. I'm on a customer record, so I'm gonna go ahead in here, and I can create as many attachments as I want. Okay, I've got a couple in there right now. I have a Word document that was a contract with this customer. I also have a picture file related to this customer. But a couple key things here. If you have a scanner installed and configured, the scan button at the bottom will be available, and you can simply hit that, scan in your pages, and you have the attachment in this window. A couple other real neat things I'll just point out quickly is on any given attachment. First of all, I did turn on in the setup the ability to flow attachments. In this one, on this contract, I said to flow it, which means it's going to flow down to every transaction that I create for this customer in the sales order processing. I also said send attachments and email. So if I have my system set up to email the invoice to a customer or quote, then I can have this contract, for instance, automatically flow to that quote and get sent out in the email to the customer.
Is this in 16 or 18?
Well, this is in 16. All of this is in 16. What they added in 16 was really the ability to scan multiple pages into one attachment, okay? Now, if I were to create, I'm not going to go through, just save time, but if I created a quote or an invoice or something, it's going to have those attachments already on there. And actually, I do have one way off to the side of the screen. Here's a quote I created for the customer. And I didn't manually go in and attach another document because I said to flow that contract, it's automatically there on that quote. All right, let's take a look at Smart List here. One thing I'll point out is now there's this export and import button at the top, and that's where you can do those functions, and that's new. And I won't go through the export to Excel. I think those of you that use SmartList probably have hit the Excel button and sent your data out to Excel. The numbers will now be formatted as numbers. And the passwords, I'll just quickly show you what that looks like. So if I go in and I want to create a favorite here, so I'm at the window to go save my favorite, I name it, and then I can simply enter a password in before I hit the Add Smart List Favorite button. And that password will protect that Smart List. So now, what if you forget the password? We're probably going to have to go on the back end and do something in the table to change the password, because it is encrypted there, what have you, but there's no function to say, what was my password? So the user would have to remember the password on that Smart List. Alrighty. Who's familiar with the payment check processing, EFT processing? Here. Anybody use that function here? A few of you? So now when you're in that window and you're going to go do a check run and you want to create a new batch, I'll just create a batch here. It's going to ask me to add a batch. Now there's a credit card option on that window. And then you can choose which card it is you're using. What will happen is any payments you make in that batch are going to add up to a lump sum that goes to the vendor account attached to the card. Okay. Let me just get out of here. So I'm going to show you the all-in-one view now. What I have up on the screen is the transaction inquiry by customer, and I pulled up one customer account. You're probably all fairly familiar with this window. I can click on a given transaction and drill down on document number to see it and so on. But what if I want to know what quote is associated with an order, with an invoice, with a payment, and those sorts of things? What I can do is I can first of all click on one of the documents here and then choose the all-in-one view button at the top. And what this has done is it's taken that document, in this case, invoice number 1024, and it's selected that as my filter, and that's right in here for those that can't see that small print there. And it showed me in this case there's a payment related to it. So I get to see all that, the relationships, all within one graphical window. And I can drill down on any of those documents. I encourage all of you to take a look at this all-in-one view. It's in purchasing, it's in inventory. It can be very useful once you spend a few minutes and kind of get a feel for it. There's a number of options available within here as well under the filter for every column. You can turn on historical, don't have it turned on. You can virtually set it up to see all documents. You can also put filtering in. So you can filter by a number of fields to limit what data appears. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to turn off that one document, and I'm going to start to see more data here. You can see across the board here I have some quotes of orders, invoices, cash receipts, and credits. And there's some more options where you can have returns and debit memos and all those different things show up in this window as well. But I'm just going to show you how it shows the relationship here. I'm going to click on my quote 1024, and now I see which order came from that quote, and I see which invoice came from that order, and so on. If I had a payment on that invoice, I would see the payment, and so forth. Any questions on that function? I think it's very useful.
So it doesn't kind of keep it on the same row for the relationship, right?
Good question. I believe it does, yes. Yeah. So if I were to switch this, pardon me?
The one that you click.
Yeah. Oh.
Relationship stuff is up higher, right?
Yes. So basically what it's doing in this case, so I have this quote here selected. Then it's going through and finding out which orders are associated with that quote. In this case, there's only one. There could be more. Okay? There could be more than one order for the quote. It only has one, so it's at the top. And also, there's only one invoice out of that order. So that's why we see those at the top. And I can turn off that one quote and get back more of my data and so on. I could click on an invoice, for instance, and see the relationship going backwards. So I clicked on an invoice, and that shows me what order is associated, what quote was associated, and so on. righty. What time are we at? Okay. So the sort options, actually in this window, I can show them right here. This is in purchasing as well. On this transaction by customer inquiry window, I'll use this as an example. In the sort by now, there's a number of different fields that are added, such as document amount remaining, those sorts of things, type. So now you can choose different sort options in this window, and you can choose ascending or descending for the order. So you'll see that in the transactions by vendor as well. Okay, I'm just going to jump back to the customer quick and just show you where to get at this print statement for one customer. So I pulled up a customer in the customer maintenance window in this case, and at the top there is a print button. And under there, one of the options is statement. So now I get a drop-down list of any of the statement IDs that I've configured in my system. I can see them there, and I can pick which one I want to print for that customer. I think the last one I'm going to show here today is saving payment options when you're doing a payment batch. So you would create your payment batch and so on, and you fill in some filters here. You might, like I said, you might put a vendor class range or some other kind of filtering to get the list to build your batch. Now there's a field where you can enter a payment option ID, and it'll prompt you to save. I'll just pick from one of the ones I already have set up, but it automatically filled in now this middle section of the screen where I have a class ID just for my US vendors and the cutoff date I had in this case. But now if I were to put in a new payment option ID and just type it in, it will prompt me to save it after I've entered in any of my filtering, and then I want to move on to the next step. It'll prompt, and then that'll be available in the list as well. Any questions on any of the GP features I just showed? Anything you'd like to see again? If you think of something after, feel free to come find me in the room, and I'd be happy to answer your questions on that. Now let's move on and talk a little bit about GP support. Now there's a general policy in place that mainstream support, meaning the support, for the product in the form of getting technical support, updates to the product, regular updates, tax updates if using payroll, is all under the mainstream. And generally speaking, it's a 5-year time frame. On this chart here, you can see, for instance, if you were on 2013 Service Pack 2, that ends April of this year. So that's already over. So those things that mainstream support has ended. They do have extended support for generally another 5 years, which basically means that if there's any security updates that have to be done, they will provide those. But everything else is pretty much off the table. You're not going to really see any new development features. You're not going to see anything like that in the product. You're not going to see other service packs, maybe to fix bugs and things necessarily. That's going to be in the mainstream time frame. Just to give you an idea kind of how their support cycle works. And then a little bit about the roadmap, and you probably can't read this, so I will just talk to it. Right now, we're at the 2018 second half of the year is kind of the next release we're expecting. And that release, they say, will have financial enhancements. This is the level of detail we have right now. Financial enhancements, purchasing, usability, sales optimization, and top features requested by customers. Now, that's likely to be like a GP 2018 R2 kind of release. And then moving into next year, right now they say ongoing development and top features. So we don't know yet what's going to be added into the version coming for next year. I think I'll get Rick up here now to cover off some of the things around the Microsoft offerings and so on. Which one's forward? And backwards. Oh, yeah, page up, page down. How can you use? Okay, right there.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Okay, so it's me and lunch, so I'll be fast. So Gord alluded to the big picture around Microsoft a little bit when he did his sort of welcome. You probably heard a lot about Dynamics 365. So Dynamics 365 is their strategic thrust on the ERP side of things. There's really two core products that they're developing within that cloud capability, and that is AX, and that's an enterprise version, and it's largely out of the realm of anybody in this room. And then the business version is the NAV product. Now, they launched the NAV product around December of 2016. And quite frankly, they did a terrible job of communicating it, and they'll probably admit to it. We were at the Summit conference last fall, and we're pretty much getting beat up, the executives at Microsoft, for the way that they launched this 365. In any event, it is the way they're moving forward. Microsoft is all about the cloud. And so we did want to sort of reinforce some points around it, that they launched the product called Finance and Operations on the business version of the product. They have now, this spring, actually launched what's called now a renaming of it called Business Central. Again, this is the NAV cloud hosted for small business, small and medium-sized businesses. They are doing a more robust launch as a fall. I know you can't read that, and I apologize for that, but as a fall, that is going to be sort of their next big sort of full version that they plan to have out. The reason this matters is, where does that put GP in the whole strategy of Microsoft? And we've had many conversations with Microsoft around this. Places like Summit had many conversations with the executive around this. When they launched the NAV product, there was a meeting called Directions, which the NAV people do. It's the regular sort of get together all of the partners and talk about NAV. At the beginning of the meeting, the way I understand it was they basically said the on-premise of NAV was going away in favor of Dynamics 365. That had huge pushback by the community there, and those are the companies who are really supporting clients like yourselves. In the NAV business, by the end of that Directions meeting, the executive got up on stage and said, oh, no, we didn't really mean that. On-premise is still important for us, and we'll be continuing with it. So I think that sort of highlights two things. One is what the client base wants. The message finds its way to get there through the partners. And that was an example of that. And two is, Microsoft doesn't have everything figured out. I don't know if how long people have been engaged with Microsoft, but it's always work in process, and things can get changed as we've witnessed. With regards to GP, though, they've reinforced that it's still very important for them. There's lots of development going on. It's still. And we have some kind of announcement coming out in fall. We don't know exactly what it is. If we had to make a guess, it probably has something to do with cloud, given the strategic thrust in the business. All right. Page up. So I just wanted to take you through a few of the Joesoftware initiatives. Again, Gord alluded to people like Chichong, who built a lot of these things, as well as others who support it. So we really have 5 products that are supporting, most of them are supporting products for GP. We've got a new product called Payroll Power Pack, a new product called Excel Everywhere, Penny 5.0, which some of you have been exposed to or actually used, Spencer's and our expense management solution, and then we also have a health and safety solution called Marshall. So Payroll Power Pack, literally in the last month basically, has been launched. And this is really an add-on for GP. It really is there for the payroll side of things, and it's there to eliminate spreadsheets for tracking payroll information, and really gets the information into your payroll solution. Some of the key features of it are the super banks, which have unlimited banks and transaction history, enhanced pay codes, related factoring and associated pay codes, and improved visibility, previewing, reporting, and smart list objects. I don't even know this product very well, so that's why I'm having to read for you. Excel everywhere. We actually had a demo the other day with another partner, another VAR, as we call it, reseller, and presented this product. And she was a payroll person. She was absolutely thrilled to hear that this product was on the available now. And what this is really, it allows for simple user-driven data integration between Excel and many GPU windows. So basically, it brings your ability to utilize Excel and get it into GP much easier. Reduces duplication, single entry, single source or entry, modifiable in Excel. It's adaptable. You pull data into an ASCII file, you use smart exports or other Excel sheets. And it really allows you to make everything simple in terms of the way you cut and paste and be able to drop it into GP. So, and by the way, happy to talk to people like Terry, anything to do with payroll. She's quite familiar with these products. Chi-Chung, again, developed these products. So if you want more details, certainly grab them at lunchtime. Penny 5.0, so that's the version we're on now. Penny is very much a payroll portal for employees. It also has some strong workflows in it well, it also has time submissions in there, but it also has workflows for approval processes in there. It is meant to be sort of self-serve, so the employee goes in, sees all their data there, including their T4 information and their statements. It has electronic leave management, electronic timesheets, punch clock integration, workflow, and works cross platforms. Again, it really is, if you're using payroll, it is something that you should get a demo of at least to see if that can help support your payroll management. Spencer, again, is a GP add-on, and this is really meant to as an expense solution associated with GP. It's obviously electronic expense management, entry, approval, verification of expenses. It is browser-based. It is designed to integrate with GP. The nice thing is that a lot of the products out in the marketplace right now have sort of this monthly cost fatigue based on the number of users that are doing expense reports. We don't have that type of model for this product, and its payables or project integration capabilities. And Marshall, this is the only one that isn't integrated with GP. This is actually a Dynamics CRM or now Dynamics 365 based product. It is for those organizations who are looking for operational health and safety solution. And it really is to track equipment incidents you want to ingrain processes in your organization and ultimately reduce risk. It also has a lot of auditing capabilities, so in those organizations that have to do auditing for what's the name of the organization I'm thinking of, workers' comp, sorry, then this is something worth considering. And so basically it supports policy creation and distribution, incident management, training and certification management. So ultimately, if you have an employee who needs to have certain certifications, this will help support your ability to manage the workflows of those certifications so they stay with the employee records. And then ultimately, we need to ensure that this thing is mobile because people are out in the field utilizing it, and it is fully mobile enabled.